If an old thought returned this morning, you may have treated its arrival as proof that your mental diet had failed. So you watched the mind more closely, fought the thought harder, and gave it even more of your attention. But the image Neville used was not a locked door that keeps every unwanted thought outside. It was a diet. A thought can appear without becoming the meal you keep serving. Tonight I will make that distinction practical, so the next old thought can become a moment of direction rather than a verdict on your progress. I am Abdullah. Neville studied with me in New York. And a man may speak beautifully for 5 minutes in the morning, then spend the remaining hours feeding the exact state he claims he wishes to leave. Watch how quietly it happens. You begin the morning with a clear assumption. For a few minutes, you feel yourself to be the person you intend to be. Then the telephone lights up. A name is missing. A payment has not arrived. One message sounds colder than you expected. The first thought rises. Here we go again. That thought may pass in a second, but then you pull out a chair for it. You read the message again. You imagine what the other person meant. You search yesterday for evidence. You carry the argument into the shower, through breakfast, and down the road. By noon, one passing thought has eaten 3 full meals, and still you blame the first thought. Hear me, the flash was not the feast. The feast was the return, the rehearsal, the private courtroom in which you called the same witness again and again, until the old verdict sounded like truth. Most people try to guard the mind like a cook, chasing every grain of salt in the air. They call this discipline. It is exhaustion wearing holy clothes. The question is not, why did this thought appear? The question is, why am I preparing it another plate? Neville once gave his audience an image from his childhood in Barbados. Keep this picture, because it holds the entire lesson. Feed for animals was scarce and expensive on the island, while fish was plentiful. His family fed their ducks fish, and the birds grew alive and fat. But a bird that lived on fish carried the taste of fish. When Neville's mother wanted 3 ducks for Sunday dinner, the cook took them from the flock and placed them in a small cage. For 7 days, she fed them corn, sour milk, and the food the family wished to taste at the table. Morning, noon, and night. Not one bite. A diet. And when the cook forgot to separate them, Neville said the mistake arrived at the table before anyone announced it. The family could taste what the birds had been eating. The bird became the evidence of its repeated nourishment. Now turn the picture inward. One thought says nothing is changing. That is a bite. But then you search the world for proof, rehearse every disappointment, predict tomorrow from yesterday, and carry the sentence to bed. That is the diet. One thought says, perhaps I am being ignored. Then you reread the silence, write the other person's speech for them, and build an identity out of a message that did not arrive. That is the diet. You do not become conscious by pretending the first bite never touched your tongue. You become conscious when you see yourself reaching for the second helping. That is where your power of direction begins. Neville made the next point plainly. The ducks could not be fed corn in the morning, fish in the afternoon, and something else at night. The change of diet had to be consistent. He joined that image to the epistle of Paul to the Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8. Whatsoever things are true, honest, just, pure, and worthy of praise, think on these things. Do not turn this into a command to smile over pain. That is not mastery. That is paint over a cracked wall. An event may disappoint you. A door may close. A number may be different from the number you wish to see. To acknowledge the event is not to feed it, but listen to what happens next. The answer is no because this is what happens to people like me. I feel afraid today becomes, this fear is telling me what my future will be. The money has not arrived, becomes, I am the one for whom. It never arrives. The first sentence names an event. The second dresses the event in your clothes and gives it your name. This is what the mental diet governs. Not the existence of every unpleasant sensation, but the identity you continue to feed beneath it. Rain may strike the window tonight. You need not call the rain a prophecy about every morning to come. Neville later spoke about controlling inner conversations. He used a familiar scene. People meet at a gathering and say, "What a pleasure to know you." Then the gathering ends, and the private conversation reveals something quite different. The outer greeting was polished. The inner speech was the true menu. You do the same thing in your practice. Your lips say, "It is done." Underneath, another voice whispers, "Then where is it? Why is it late? What did I do wrong?" Do not punish yourself when you hear that voice. Listen to it the way a physician listens through an instrument. It is showing you where the old state is still being fed. Perhaps your shoulders tighten, your thumb refreshes the same screen. You conduct an imaginary trial in which every witness confirms that nothing has changed. Stop there. Not because you have committed a crime, because you have finally entered the kitchen while the meal is being prepared. You can put down the spoon without burning down the kitchen. Now I will tell you why the return of an old thought does not disqualify you. In New York, in 1933, Neville came to me and said that, for the first time in 12 years, he wanted to return to Barbados. He had no employment and no money for the journey. I asked him whether he truly wanted to go. He said yes. So I told him that he was in Barbados. He was to leave my door and walk the streets of New York as though he walked among the palms and coconut trees of the island. He argued with the evidence, as people do. 2 weeks passed. Chianti returned to explain that he was no nearer the journey. I had already given him the instruction. There was nothing to add. Then a letter arrived from his brother with money for his needs and arrangements for a ticket. At the shipping office, Neville was offered third class for the first part of the voyage, with first-class privileges and a later move to first class. He accepted it. He came to me pleased with the compromise. I asked him who had told him he was going third class. The assumption was Barbados, first class, not a partial arrival dressed as fulfillment. When Neville reached the dock, the agent told him there had been a cancellation. He traveled first class. Neville later taught this as a lesson in remaining faithful to an idea. But do not miss what his own account reveals. He wavered. He accepted the visible compromise. He tried to make the evidence the final authority. And yet the moment of wavering did not become the end of the story. Later in that same lecture, Neville admitted that he had not completely mastered the movement of his attention. His mistakes, he said, would expose him if he pretended otherwise. There is honesty in that confession, and freedom for you. The discipline is not a mind in which no old road appears. The discipline is refusing to call the old road your home simply because your foot touched it again. Do not stamp the day failed. That stamp is only another serving of the same meal. Turn again. Now, I will give you a practice for the next week. This is a manifest axis exercise derived from Neville's principles. It is not a technique he gave in these exact steps, and the week is a period of observation, not a promised deadline for results. First, choose one premise that describes the person you intend to practice being. Do not write a speech. Choose one clean sentence. I meet this day as one who is supported, or I respond from steadiness rather than fear. Second, before the noise of the day begins, hear one short inner conversation that belongs to that person. A trusted voice recognizes the quality you have chosen. Keep the scene small enough to hold like a warm cup in both hands. Third, when the old thought appears, do not wrestle it. Ask one question. Is this a passing taste, or am I preparing another plate? Look for the preparation, rehearsing, predicting, checking, arguing, taking one outer moment and carving it into your name. Fourth, decline the second helping. You need not shout a new sentence over the old one. Return to one inner exchange, one sensory detail, or one sober sentence that belongs to your selected premise. If the old voice says, "You are being ignored," feel your feet on the floor and answer from identity, not panic. This moment does not decide who I am. Finally, review the menu before sleep. Do not count every thought like coins scattered across a table. Ask what you fed most often, where you noticed the old meal being prepared, and where you chose again. Observation, direction, return, not purity. There are 3 traps at this table. The first is suppression. You organize the whole day around the thought you are trying not to see. The unwanted guest receives the finest chair because you spend every hour guarding the door against him. The second is counter-affirmation panic. One old thought appears, and you pile 100 frantic words on top of it. But the hidden sentence remains, something dangerous happened, and I must neutralize it. That is not direction. That is fear changing costumes. The third is perfection scoring. One difficult hour becomes proof that you are incapable, undisciplined, and back at the beginning. A dropped spoon does not require burning down the kitchen. Neville wondered. He noticed. He returned. So will you. The old thought may arrive carrying yesterday's menu. It sounds familiar because you have heard it at this table many times. But familiarity is not authority. You can notice the plate without eating from it. You can acknowledge the event without feeding it into an identity. You can hear the old inner conversation without giving it the final word. Do not turn your mind into an enemy to be searched at every door. Become deliberate about what you welcome, rehearse, and serve again. The old thought may knock. You still decide whether to set a place for it. And when you notice that you have slipped from the state, there is a second difficulty, trying so hard to get back that the effort itself makes the state feel farther away. For that exact moment, we have prepared the Manifesting Anchor Guide. Go to the description, find the first link, and download it. It will show you how to approach the return without rebuilding an entire scene or wrestling with doubt until you are exhausted. Now you have learned to watch what you feed in silence. But the next thing leaving your mouth may be introducing a version of you before you enter the room. In this Neville Goddard technique will make you dangerously magnetic. I show you why one ordinary sentence can shape how people experience you and how to catch the sentence that has been speaking on your behalf. Watch it next, it is on your screen now.